Control dynamics, understanding the hidden drivers of human behavior. Ever wonder why some people feel the need to control others? Control dynamics are everywhere, in relationships, workplaces, eating, parenting, and even in how we relate to ourselves. Today, we're diving into the hidden reasons behind these behaviors and how understanding them can improve our lives. 1. Control in relationships. Let's start with relationships. Control often comes from attachment insecurities. Think of someone like Sarah, who has an anxious attachment style. She's constantly texting her partner, checking on him, asking where he is and who he's with. For Sarah, these behaviors are ways of controlling her partner's time and attention. It may look like concern on the surface, but it's rooted in a deep fear of abandonment, feeling disconnected from her partner. Due to the lack of a secure object internalized in childhood, her need to have everything her partner does under control helps her feel safe. Then there's James, who has an avoidant attachment style. Instead of constantly texting, James keeps his distance emotionally. He doesn't share his thoughts or feelings easily and gets uncomfortable when his partner tries to talk about emotions. By keeping emotional distance, he's exerting control in a different way. He's setting limits on how close others can get, which helps him feel safe. One extreme form of relational control is gaslighting, where one person manipulates another's perception of reality. For example, Mark consistently downplays his partner Rachel's concerns. When she brings up something he did that upset her, he says, "You're overreacting," or "That never happened." Over time, Rachel starts doubting her own memory and perceptions, giving Mark more control over their relationship. This manipulation is often rooted in Mark's fear of losing power or influence over Rachel. In adult relationships, trauma survivors often use control to manage the emotional risks that come with closeness. They control how others can affect others by setting rigid boundaries, using silence, removing themselves while in communication, or distancing themselves emotionally while in relationships. These protective strategies help them feel safer but can also limit their ability to form trusting, intimate relationships. 2. Control in the workplace. Control also plays a big role in the workplace. Take Mike, a manager who constantly micromanages his team. He's always asking for updates, rechecking everyone's work, and rarely allows his employees to make decisions independently. While it might seem like he's just thorough, Mike's behavior often stems from his own insecurities. He's worried about his department's performance and how it reflects on him, so he controls every detail to prevent things from going wrong. In contrast, Amy is a manager who takes an autonomy-supportive approach. Instead of micromanaging, she gives her team the space to make their own decisions and supports them when they need guidance. Research shows that supportive leadership fosters a healthier, more productive workplace. Employees feel trusted, which leads to higher motivation, creativity, and a sense of ownership. So, while control may help managers like Mike feel less anxious, it often backfires. Employees feel demoralized, stressed, and even resentful. Amy's approach, by contrast, builds a positive environment where employees feel respected and empowered. 3. Control and eating behaviors. Control dynamics also appear in our relationship with food. Let's look at Emily, who has anorexia. She follows a strict diet, counts every calorie, and exercises obsessively. To Emily, controlling what she eats is a way of managing her self-esteem and anxiety. When other areas of her life feel uncertain or overwhelming, having strict control over her diet makes her feel competent and in control. On the other hand, Jake struggles with bulimia. He goes through cycles of binge eating followed by purging. During a binge, he feels like he's lost control, but purging gives him a way to reassert control and release the guilt he feels after eating. These cycles reflect both a need for control and a struggle with self-regulation, often triggered by stress or emotional pain. Both Emily's and Jake's behaviors illustrate how controlling eating can serve as a coping mechanism, helping them feel more in control of their emotional world. Unfortunately, these behaviors can lead to serious physical and psychological consequences. Understanding these control needs root can be a step toward healthier coping mechanisms. 4. Control in parenting. Control dynamics often emerge in parenting, where a parent's fears, insecurities, or unresolved issues can influence their need to control their child's behavior, choices, and even emotions. This type of control can be subtle, like overly strict rules, or more overt, such as controlling who the child can spend time with or what activities they can pursue. While setting boundaries is an essential part of parenting, excessive control can limit a child's ability to develop autonomy, resilience, and confidence. Consider Karen, a mother who experienced neglect as a child. Karen is determined to protect her daughter Emma from any potential harm. She carefully monitors Emma's activities, checks her schoolwork meticulously, and even discourages Emma from trying new things, fearing that she might fail or get hurt. Karen's need to control stems from her own unresolved anxiety about safety and stability. By keeping a tight grip on Emma's environment, she feels more secure. However, Emma is beginning to feel anxious herself. She's hesitant to try new things and worries about making mistakes, fearing her mother's reaction. This kind of controlling parenting, often termed helicopter parenting, can prevent children from developing independence and can even lead to anxiety or self-doubt as they internalize their parents' fears. Research shows that children with over-controlling parents may struggle with self-esteem and decision-making in adulthood, as they haven't had the chance to test their own abilities. Studies by Wendy Grolnick highlight that children raised in highly controlled environments often feel less competent and more dependent on external validation. Many parenting styles, such as authoritarian, permissive, and neglectful approaches, may stem from a parent's underlying need to control their children due to fears of losing authority, feelings of guilt, or discomfort in managing their children's emotions or their own. 5. Trauma and types of control responses. Trauma also shapes our need for control. Children who grow up in chaotic, trauma-filled, or abusive households often develop control behaviors as a form of self-protection. Lily, for instance, experienced constant arguments and emotional neglect at home. By the time she started school, she had developed selective mutism. She wouldn't speak in certain settings, like the classroom, although she was fine talking at home. Her silence was a way of controlling her exposure to judgment or unwanted attention. It gave her a sense of security in an environment that felt unpredictable. Selective mutism is an example of how trauma can lead individuals to control aspects of their behavior to avoid further pain or anxiety. For Lily, silence became a shield, a way to feel in control in a world that felt too chaotic. Control dynamics can also manifest in children through physical symptoms, such as tics, which may serve as unconscious responses to their environment. Tics or stutter, repetitive, involuntary movements or sounds, often emerge as ways for children to manage internal stress or anxiety, especially when they feel unable to express or control their emotions directly. In families where there is excessive control or high expectations, children may develop tics as an unconscious method to self-regulate and release tension. Take Liam, a young boy with a nervous throat-clearing tic. His parents are highly involved in his academic and extracurricular activities, expecting perfection in every area. Though his parents' intentions are positive, Liam feels pressure to meet their standards and control his own behavior to avoid disappointing them. Unable to articulate his stress or release it verbally, Liam's body finds an outlet through the tic, which acts as a subtle form of control over his environment and emotions. For Liam, the tic becomes a physical expression of the tension he's holding in, and while he may not consciously choose it, it gives him a way to cope with the pressure he feels. Research suggests that tics often increase in frequency or intensity during times of stress or heightened expectations, highlighting their role as coping mechanisms. Some psychoanalytic perspectives view tics as a way for children to reclaim a sense of control in situations where they feel powerless or overly controlled. While tics are typically treated through behavioral or neurological approaches, understanding the underlying emotional or environmental factors, such as family dynamics, can be crucial in reducing their intensity and helping children express their needs in healthier ways. In parenting these anxious children with behavioral symptoms, parents who have unresolved past trauma will tend to use tactics that they can use for immediate behavioral or emotional control in their children without attending to the fear and anxiety behind these misbehaving children. 6. Timing and severity of trauma and degree of control. From an object relations perspective, the earlier and more severe a trauma is, the more significant its impact on control behaviors later in life. Trauma occurring early in childhood affects development in distinct ways. When trauma happens before 10 months, children often experience profound loneliness and a sense of emptiness, leading them to overly control their environment as a way to regulate their emotions and use overly protective toward their family members due to a lack of trust toward others. Studies by researchers like Alan Shore suggest that early trauma can disrupt emotional regulation and attachment, leaving individuals with an intense need for control to manage overwhelming feelings of insecurity or fear. If trauma occurs before 18 months, when secure attachment is still forming, their developing brain is still vulnerable. These children may adopt tactics of emotional distancing, building rigid boundaries to protect themselves. For instance, a child exposed to abandonment, neglect, or abuse in a physical, emotional, or sexual nature in infancy before 18 months from birth may develop an extreme degree of hypervigilance, paranoia, and controlling tendencies without awareness in adulthood as subconscious defenses to ward off perceived threats. When trauma occurs after 18 months but before age 3, children may internalize control as strict self-regulation, adhering to rigid rules and moral standards to manage their inner world. These early traumatic experiences can embed deep feelings of fear, paranoia, anger, guilt, and anxiety as the brain becomes wired to expect instability or danger, which can produce children or adults who are constantly in fear, paranoia, anger, guilt, or anxiety or stress dealing with their daily life, work or relationships. In adulthood, these control behaviors become ingrained responses as defense mechanisms to situations of stress and anxiety as individuals attempt to create a sense of stability and predictability in their environment. This helps explain why people with early trauma histories might struggle with obsessive-compulsive behaviors, relational control, or even eating disorders, all of which serve to reduce the underlying fear and anxiety rooted in those early fears. Conclusion. So, what can we do about control dynamics? The first step is awareness. Recognizing control behaviors in ourselves or others can help us understand the root causes, whether it's anxiety, insecurity, or unresolved trauma. Once we understand these drivers, we can replace control behaviors with healthier responses, like setting boundaries, practicing empathy, and using open communication. By understanding control, we take the first step toward growth. We can transform our relationships and interactions, moving from control to connection and ultimately to greater well-being.